Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope that you people are well. Today we are going to discuss our chapter number 7, which is on retail locations. It's a very important chapter in a sense that location comes in one of the sustainable competitive advantages. If you remember that we discussed in the last lectures that if you want to be successful retailer, you need to find out not only competitive advantage but a sustainable competitive advantage. And if you go back and check, I told you that on top of the list of sustainable competitive advantages is location. So you can see that if you have a good location, if you find a good location for your retail outlet, for your store, for your business, it can contribute to your sustainability in terms of competitive advantage. So you can have a long-term or a sustainable competitive advantage. So that's why location is extremely important. Chapter number 7 of your book, here we go. Now, these are some of the things that probably you'd be able to answer after completing this chapter. We will discuss the different types of locations and the availability of those locations to the retailer, the pros and cons, the positive and negatives of each location, and what are the things that you have to consider when you are selecting a retail location. Now, a very nice slide. It says that what are the three most important things when you are thinking being a retailer? What are the three most important things in retailing? The answer is location, location, location. Here, the author, the writer is emphasizing on the importance of location, that it is very important to select a good location if you want your retail outlet to be successful. Now, why is it important? The answer is here. This can be a very short question in the exam as well, that why retail locations are important for a retailer. So you can simply say because a retail location is the prime consideration of customers. So being a customer, when we want to visit a retail outlet, most of the time we visit a retail outlet because the location of the retail outlet is good. Either it is in the close vicinity, it is closer to us, or the location is attractive locations. Take an example of KLCC. Why do most of us visit KLCC? Because the location is so attractive. KLCC itself is in a very nice prime location. So it's a prime consideration of the customers. Why it is important for retailer? Because it is one of the sustainable competitive advantages. The thing that you have to keep in mind now is that should you go for purchasing a retail location, like investing in it, or you should lease a retail location? The answer is not straightforward and the answer is not easy. In some of the places you may not be even able to buy because of the government. Some of the government's rule and regulations, they will let you only lease a location. They would only let you rent a location rather than investing in lump sum. So you have to choose between investment or leasing a location carefully. We have two main types of locations. We have unplanned locations and we have planned locations. Now, unplanned locations, as the name says, unplanned. They are not centrally controlled. They are not centrally managed. They are the locations where each and every retail outlet in that location is autonomous. So they decide on their own things. On the other hand, we have planned locations. Now, planned locations, as the name shows, they are controlled centrally. They have central management. There is a manager who enforces policies, and there are things that the retail outlet individually cannot do, and we will discuss that later as well. For instance, you want to have your own operating hours, so you cannot do that because it is centrally controlled. So you have to start at the time when the centrally planned location is open, and you have to stop when they have the time to close down. And the common example of most of the shopping malls, when we go to a shopping mall, it starts at 10 and it closes here in Malaysia at 10 as well. So at 10 p.m. everything closes. So just imagine that you are a store, you have a lot of customers in the queue, but the planned locations have policy that you have to close down at 10, you have to close down at 10. So there are other things as well in the unplanned as well. For instance, you have an autonomy of working hours, lighting, security, and everything as of your own. But then what about again the security issues? What about the central air conditioning, the central heating system? All those are not there when it comes to the unplanned location. There is a technical thing that I want you to focus on, that's called gross leasable area. What is a gross leasable area? It is the total floor area designated or designed specifically for the retailer's occupancy. So what is a GLA? It is also commonly called GLA. GLA is an area in a retail in a building. So it's a tall building where there are so many floors. The area or the floors that are designed for only retailers occupancy, we call it GLA, or gross leasable area. And most of those buildings where we have on the first few floors the stores, the business, the commercial area, and on the top floors we have residence or offices, and you're witness to that. We have a lot of these kind of buildings here where the first few floors are dedicated to the retailers, we call it the GLA, and the upper floors are for residence or for offices, so we call it GLA. The types of retail locations. Now we have many types of retail locations, and we will discuss that even further. We discussed it, I think, in chapter number 2, if you remember, in detail as well. So what are the types of retail locations? The first one is called freestanding sites. We will discuss that in more detail in the coming slides or in the coming part of the lecture. So we have freestanding slides, I said. We have freestanding sites. Freestanding sites are also sometimes referred to as stand-alone retailers. So they are stand-alone or freestanding. Then we have city or town locations. In the city and town locations, we have inner city and we have main street, which we'll discuss in detail. Then we have shopping centers. We have different types of shopping centers, and then we have other retail outlets and other retail opportunities that we can avail. Now, before we go to the types of retail locations and discuss it in more detail, it's important to find out the reasons or the factors that influence the selection of a retail location. Why do we select a particular retail location? What are the things that we have to keep in mind? Remember, it is always a game of trade-offs. What do you mean by trade-offs? That you have to give something, and in return you will get something. So sometimes you get something better, sometimes you have to lose something better. The size of the trade area. So the bigger the size of the retail area, the size of the trade area, you will see that it includes the geographic area encompassing most of the customers who would patronize a specific retail site. So the size itself plays a very important role. So the bigger the area, the more important the area, the higher would be the rent, the higher would be the price of the retail location. Then what about the occupancy cost? So we select not only the retail location because of its importance with regard to the trading, but we also select a location based on how much I have to pay for that. We call it the occupancy cost of the locations. Then we have two types of traffics that we have to keep in mind. We have the vehicular, or the traffic of the cars or the vehicles. We call it the vehicular traffic. And we also have the pedestrian traffic. So a location is considered a good location when you find out a lot of vehicles traveling by that area, or you find a lot of people walking around that area. That's why you see in the CBD, we'll discuss the CBD in the later part of the chapter, the central business district. You see that normally it is very expensive. A very small stall is very expensive. Why? Because it has a high pedestrian and vehicular traffic. The areas normally on the highways where you see drive-throughs, why they're very expensive? Because it has a high vehicular traffic, right? So the pedestrian traffic and the traffic from the vehicles plays a very important role in the selection of the retail location. Then operating hours, as I told you, it is planned or it is unplanned. A lot of businesses would want to keep their outlet open for longer time because of the customers' demand, but they cannot do it because of the situation. What is the situation? That they have to comply with the policies because they are in the planned locations. And another very important one is the convenience. How convenient the location is for the customers. Is it located in an area which the customers can access easily, or is it located in an area which is not easily accessible by the customers? So it's a game of trade-off. So it's a trade-off between locations. You pay more rent when the traffic is heavy. What does it mean? This particular diagram shows that when the traffic is heavy. What do you mean by the traffic is heavy? When you see a lot of cars and people in that location, when the traffic of the people and the cars are heavy, you see that the rent would be higher as well. This is a table that shows you the sizes of the locations, different type of locations, which we are going to discuss in a while. Then the trading area, the occupancy cost, and either they are planned or they are unplanned, and the type of traffic that you'll be confronting if you open your store in that area. So please kindly go through this table. This table is in your book on page 184 as well. Let's talk about the unplanned locations. Now, what is an unplanned location? As I told you, that an unplanned location is a location where there are no central management available. So the managers are not there to let you know when to open and when to close. You have a central security, you have central heating and cooling system, you have a central parking system, and everything is central lighting system. All those things are missing out there. So what are the types which comes under the unplanned retail locations? The first one is called a freestanding site or a stand-alone location. Now, a stand-alone location is a location, as you can see in the diagram, which is standing alone. You don't see any other store in the nearby or attached with that store. So it is unconnected, as it is rightly mentioned here. It is unconnected retailer with other retailers. So it has positive and negatives. What are the positives? It is convenient for the retailers. It's high traffic and high visibility is there. The occupancy cost is not very high, and since you are not in front of the competitors, so your competitors cannot easily imitate you, and there are only few restrictions on you because of your autonomy. You are alone. You are in a separate place, and there is no manager to look at what time you're starting or closing, what heating and cooling system you use, and so on and so forth. But the problem with this system is that you cannot attract a lot of people walking to your store. Rather, they need to have a car to come to your store. So the pedestrian traffic is very, very low. And you see that when we visit a shopping mall, a centrally planned area, we just go to some stores without even planning to go to those stores. But in the unplanned retail locations, you normally go to that retailer. Before you go to that retailer from your home, you have a solid plan that you have to visit him. Otherwise, why would you go to a standalone place, a standalone or a freestanding location when there is no other retailer in the nearby? But in the shopping malls, in the planned locations, the things are different. We visit them and we visit some other stores that were not in our plan. So that thing is missing in the unplanned locations. Now, it's a very important topic actually. It was included many times in the exam. And we have city and town locations, but in the city and town location, the topic that I will focus on is gentrification. Now, before I tell you about gentrification, let me first tell you the definition which is here. That gentrification is bringing the population back to the cities. What is gentrification? Bringing the population back to the cities. Now, I want to tell you a story before I go and tell you the definition of gentrification or explain what gentrification is. Now, long ago, if you remember, people used to live in the villages. First, you have to understand the urban and the rural areas. So, urban areas are the areas which are the cities, and rural areas are the areas which are considered the villages. So, many years ago, take an example of yourself as well. Our grandfathers used to live in the villages, or our grandfathers used to live in the villages. In the villages, life was simple, calm, and nice. That were called people living in the rural area. But then time passed and people found out that the life is very slow in the rural area, and they wanted to go and settle down in the cities, and cities were more attractive. I'll give an example of my own father as well, that grandfathers were living in the rural area, but then my father wanted to live in an area which is where there are a lot of things going on, where education is easy, where health facilities are there, and other facilities are nearby. And that is the time where people started moving from rural area to urban area. Pay attention, that is the time where people started moving from rural area to urban areas, and the process is called urbanization. Let me try to write, if I can write. The process where the people started moving from rural areas to urban areas is a process, and that is very important, and I'll tell you about it. The process is called urbanization. Understand this word? Urbanization is the process where the people started moving from rural areas to urban areas. Now, people started living in the urban areas. Things were very beautiful. Cities were very upscale happening. Things were happening there. Education, health, and all those facilities were there. But then the time came where the cities became congested, where the people started feeling suffocated there. They found that there are a lot of buildings and a lot of people and noises and pollution is there, and they were missing out the nature. Pay attention. They were missing out the nature. I'll give you my own example. I grew up in the city, and then a time came when I told my father that, living in the center of the city is really, really stressful. Let's go and settle down somewhere where I can see the river, where I can see the fields, greenery, where I can see nature. So that was the time where people started thinking to move back from urban areas to the other areas. Now, what were the other areas? That is the interesting part. People actually did not move to the villages back. A lot of people did not move to the villages back. Some may have moved, but most of the people did not move to the villages back. Rather, they found out a place which is in the middle of the city and the village, and that area is called suburban area. I'm sure that you've heard of this word, suburban area. Now, suburban area is an area which has a blend of the village and the city at the same time. But the process, pay attention, this is important, and this is in your book as well. If you check your book, in your book, this is something written on page 186. They talk about where the people started moving out of the cities, right? The process where the people, what is the process? The process of a previously functioning city or a part of the city falling into disrepair. Now, is the process, pay attention. Now, what is it? It's a process where people started moving from cities, the urban areas, to the suburban areas. And what do we call it? They call it urban decay. Now, it's very important for you to understand it, right? So people started moving from urban areas to the suburban areas. Now, pay attention. Again, what is gentrification then? Now, people started settling down in the suburban areas. When people go out of the cities, what happened to the cities then? Cities get empty. Cities get isolated. Cities are not moving in the pace that they used to move previously. So that creates a problem. That creates a problem of people leaving the tall skyscrapers empty, and it is not good for the economy of the country. So the countries then introduce another method, and the method is what is here. It is called gentrification. And what did they do is they tried to find mechanisms or methods to attract people back from the rural areas and the suburban areas to the cities, and the process is called gentrification. But how did they do that? They beautified the cities. They made the places more attractive. For example, opening For example, opening a natural park in the middle of the city for you. Jogging tracks were introduced, parks. Take an example of our Kuala Lumpur. In the near vicinities, we have so many lake view parks. We have the Taman Tasik Pardana Park, we have the Botanical Garden, we have the Metropolitan Park. We have so many parks, and these are huge parks where you can go and enjoy the nature in the city. So the buildings were also redecorated to make it look more natural. Take an example of some of the buildings here in Kuala Lumpur, where you see the swimming pool. The swimming pool have a lot of greenery, a lot of plants and trees, where on the top floor even, and you feel really relaxed there. So that is the process where the government started working on beautifying the cities in order to attract the people back, attracting the population back to the cities, and the process called gentrification. So I explained it a lot, and that is what I'm expecting from you in the exam as well. What are the advantages and disadvantages of gentrification to the retailers? Now, gentrification advantages to the retailers are that you see that wealthy people who have money, they started returning back to the city. So when people come back to the city, economic activities start working, and that is what you want. Young professionals started settling down in the city. We want young professionals. There is another very interesting concept and related to consumer behavior. We call it return of empty nesters. Understand what is an empty nester. This is related to something which is called, please go and read about consumer life cycle. Please read about it and you will understand in the consumer life cycle or normal people life cycle even, you know, but particularly with regard to family life cycle. So read about the family life cycle and you will see that how people are normally living with the families. See, let me give an example. Empty nester. You're alone, then you get married. You become two. Then what happens is that you have kids. You become 3, 4, 5, depending on the situation. So you have a good big family, but then the time comes where your kids grow up and they want to settle down somewhere else and leave you alone. So just imagine that situation quick and fast forward. Your kids leave and you are again husband and wife living alone. But then a time comes when one of the spouses die, and it may be a husband or a wife. So one person die and then the other person is living alone, and that situation is called an empty nest. Sad, but that is what it is. Then we have advantages. We're talking about the advantages. What are the other advantages? Some incentives were given to the people. For example, loans were provided to buy homes and apartments. Easy loans were available, interest-free loans were available. Jobs were announced for those people who would come from skilled people who come from the suburban or urban areas to the cities. The occupancy cost were reduced, and so on and so forth. Right? CBD. What is a CBD, or a Central Business District? Central Business District, or CBD, is an area which is the center of the business, which is the heart of the business, and an area in a city where a lot of economic activity is going on, an area where there is a lot of businesses operating, in an area where there are a lot of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, particularly pedestrian traffic, right? Now, what are the benefits of opening a store in the CBD? First, in office hours, you will see that it will be crowded and a lot of people would like to buy from you. You will see that all the public transportation from any part of the country or city would be able to come there. So it's easy transportation there. You will see a high pedestrian traffic there. A lot of people come there. You will see a lot of residents there as well. People are staying. Most of these people would prefer to stay nearby the CBD. But the problem with the CBD is that it requires higher level of security because of a lot of people. A lot of people means that there are chances that there may be some not so good people. So they may do shoplifting, they may steal from you. The parking facilities are horrible in most of the CBDs, but they are improving a lot. You will see that the evenings after work hours and the weekends are really, really terrible for businesses in the CBD because the offices are closed on the weekends, and you will see that people don't buy. Main street versus CBD. What is the benefit of a main street versus CBD? Now, when we talk about Main Street, we are talking about the traditional downtown shopping areas in a smaller town, or an area which have lower occupancy cost, the areas which are not as expensive as the CBDs, but they are attractive. Now, attractive because you will find parking there, the roads are comparatively wider, but you can, if you compare it with the CBD, of course you'll not be able to attract as many people. But as I told you, the costs are low, the stores are bigger comparatively, so there are pros and cons there. You will not have a lot of options, but you will have enough room for buying things at ease. And then you don't find out a lot of restrictions, right? On the stores. Inner city is a place where you will see small stores, but it has a lot of things to offer to you being a retailer. The first thing that you will see that it has a very high sales volume. Higher margins are there and higher profits are there as well, because a lot of people are there in inner city, and you will see that the competition is comparatively not as high. And the main point is because there is an unmet demand. How much? According to your book, 25% of the unmet demand is there in the inner city. Now, some of the things that I want to cover, which I probably would cover in the shopping malls, the central, up till now we discussed the unplanned locations. Inshallah, in the next lecture, I'm going to discuss with you the planned locations. But for now, the unplanned locations, we discussed quite a number of them. Please go through it, inshallah, in the coming slides, in the coming lecture. I'm going to start from the shopping centers, where I'm going to cover the unplanned locations. So if there are questions, if there are any comments, feel free to post it on the LMS or on the Google Classroom or on the platforms that you're using, and I'll be inshallah replying to them. With that, I hope that you will enjoy this lecture, and we will discuss that further in the live session. Take care. Bye.